Hi, everyone. I'm Rick Barron, your host, and welcome to my podcast, That's Life, I Swear. My guest today is Chris Watson. Chris is the creator and host of the Adventurers Diaries podcast, a show that speaks to embracing adventure in all its forms, and it's now embarking on its fifth season. His show celebrates adventure, environmental stewardship, and the simple but profound act of intentionally getting outside and enjoying the beauty of nature. Chris's journey to podcasting is a story in itself. Now, like all of us, Chris found himself suddenly grounded during COVID-19. It was during that time that Chris made a bold decision to create the podcast he'd always been dreaming about for many years. Now, the Adventurers Diaries is not just another adventure podcast. Trust me. Chris brings a unique philosophy to every episode, bridging what he calls the Moonshot Gap, and he's going to explain that to us. While he features incredible guests from NASA astronauts to mountaineers who've climbed Mount Everest, he always draws out practical, accessible calls to adventure for the rest of us. So whether you're dreaming of your next big expedition or simply looking for inspiration to step outside your comfort zone, this conversation is for you. So please join me as I have my conversation with Chris Watson. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, it's great to have you. I've been following your podcast now since I first met you, and I've been playing a lot of catch up here. So I have so many questions to ask of you. But I guess if you could just share a little bit about your background, and then we can dive into how you came about with creating this fantastic podcast of yours.
Yeah, well, for those that are listening, I think the accent probably gives it away. So I'm born and bred and raised in Glasgow, Scotland. So I live on kind of close to the west coast of Scotland. I'm in my late 40s, almost 50 now. I can't quite believe where the years have gone. But yeah, in terms of me, I have a full-time corporate career. I've worked in IT for 30 years or so, a long time. And yeah, I'm very, very passionate about the outdoors and adventure and expeditions and obviously the natural world. So all of that stuff, which has been a part of my life forever. It always has been, but we'll probably come to that when we talk through the story of kind of how I started the podcast. But yeah, I've always been someone that's had a close affinity with the outdoors and seeking that solitude and refuge a lot of the time over the years. But yeah, that's me. I'm currently in Glasgow in Scotland at the moment, so it's good to speak to you across the pond.
That's great. So in terms of going back to when all of us were kind of hiding away from the COVID-19 pandemic, and I think you kind of alluded to why, but what was that spark that told you, I need to start a podcast to talk about this love of adventure? What was the, I don't know, what was the spark? Sure.
Yeah, it's probably multi-layered, actually. Probably a few things to unpack. So in my day job, I less so now. I mean, I still travel a lot and travel over countries, internationally. But before COVID-19, I mean, it was excessive. I could be in three different European cities within 1 week. And I have a young family as well. So, I mean, it was quite a lot of travel. Quite a kind of fairly high pressure job at times because of the projects I work on. And I was always used to being on the go. And I pretty much immersed myself and I still do, in my corporate career. And when kind of COVID kind of hit and then we were all grounded and we couldn't travel, that's when I had much more time for like introspection and started to question, what I was doing with my life, not just in the corporate career, but just generally because when I was on the hop all the time, you don't really get time to think or stop. You're just constant, a constant flux. You're constant moving, jumping from one project to another. But when I was doing that, a lot of my escapism and downtime was on aeroplanes, listening to podcasts, reading National Geographic, and I've been a subscriber to Nat Geo since I was a kid, and I've always had that love for the outdoors and the natural world. And something, I mean, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with, like Microsoft Teams and Zoom calls and sitting on them day in, day out. Many people went from traveling to meetings to be sitting having meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting every day, essentially. And then I just thought, well, if I can have a conversation like that all day, every day about IT, I'm sure I could squeeze in a conversation and allow me to escape again with someone after hours and talk about something that's equally, if not cooler than IT. And I could maybe scratch that itch. And I've always been a creative person as well. But I used to study art and design, weirdly, before I got into IT. So, and yeah, I kind of put two and two together. And I had seen someone on a corporate stage before talking about adventure, and it was always in the back of my mind. I've always thought for years I would love to do that. And I'm used to being on stage presenting in various or in meeting rooms and boardrooms presenting and stuff like that. So that was it. It was a degree of like partly a degree of escapism, but there's another layer to that as well, that was all in my head. But to actually make the leap and actually make it happen, that was a product of therapy. Because like COVID happened to us all, and I was going through some personal challenges at the same time as COVID, not long after, or not shortly before COVID, and then kind of through COVID. So I had quite a lot of personal things that I had to kind of deal with and process, and it all compounded at that same time. And it wasn't until a few years after it that I actually took the leap to actually do it. So there's a bit of window between COVID and then this actually happening, to be fair. But yeah, ruminating on it for far too long, as I do with a lot of things in my head, and then eventually pulling the trigger actually and starting it was the best thing. And which I'm sure we'll come to that. But that's a long-winded answer, Rick. So hopefully that's kind of giving you some
No,
insight.
that's great. I think that really paints the landscape of where you were, what you were thinking, and then how you were wanting to get there. And it seems like you had a comfort zone of being able to speak, because you said you've given presentations, and I think that's half the battle right there. Because you have to really tell a good story, so to speak. So you had the idea. How did you go about initially pulling it together to say, okay, here are my thoughts. Am I going to want to talk to just people who climb mountains? I'm going to talk to people who like to fish. I mean, what was your thought process to go into that?
I mean, that's a very good question. I think to give it to anchor it, really, what you said there about presentations in the corporate world, that is the core of what I do. I could present two or three times a month in a proper pressured environment. So I'm used to preparing and knowing. We always say know your customer, so I'm used to knowing my customer. And if I translate that to the podcast, I know my guests. So anyone, and I think that's kind of one of the reasons it still stands out and differentiates a little bit today, is I don't invite anyone onto the show, and I get pitched every single day, literally every single day. But I know my guests. So and I mean that as in not a literal sense that I know them to meet. I'll know them because I would have studied their work, or I've watched their TV shows, I've read their books, I've seen them talk on stage, whatever it is, or followed them on socials. And because I have that kind of relationship with them, not reciprocated, I'm invested in their story. I understand their, what they're putting out into the world, and that's made the approach much more authentic, for one. But it means that when I get to have the conversation, I don't necessarily need to be worrying about over prepping and things like that, because I kind of know and I want to have a different conversation with them about things that just the way my mind works. You know, they may have done an interview on another show, but I strive to ask a different set of questions or dig into a different story arc or whatever. And I think that just really resonates with the guests.
Yeah, I think that's highly key, and I do the same on my end because I think it shows the person that you are interviewing that I have a keen interest in your background, and here's
Yeah.
proof of how I can share things with you without you asking me, well, what do you know about me? Well, let me tell you. I had a similar person that I interviewed, just getting off topic very quickly, and studied their background, and I found out that their very first stage debut in acting was they were a frog in one of these the Christmas Story, the Nutcracker. And when I shared that little bit of nugget with that person, they said, "No one that I know ever knew that. How did you find that out?" I said, "Well, it's on the internet." But I think it surprised them that I took the effort to really dig deep to find out those golden nuggets of information that would be of interest,
Yeah.
or that's
But
something
that's it, Rick,
to
isn't it?
discuss.
That's it, Rick. I think that's what comes across in these types of interviews and these conversations. If you're curious about that in the moment, or you're curious about that in terms of reaching out to ask a guest, there must be a reason why. Because I see I mean, podcasting is having such a surge at the moment. There's podcasts being created every other day, and everyone wants to be a podcaster. But
Hmm.
you've been doing this a lot longer than I have. Not everyone has the longevity, and I think if you're curious about your subject matter and you not want to just do this for the sake of doing it, or it's the next fad, if you show that curiosity, then people get that, and they'll relate to that, and that's when I do my show, that's exactly what it is. I'm just curious. These people inspire me or entertain me or both, and I want to have that conversation with them. And my mind automatically goes to my own curiosities, not the things that's in my head, not necessarily the 10 questions that they may have answered in every other single podcast. And if I can get anyone to say at any point, either on the show or after, that they hadn't been asked that question before, or they appreciated the preparation or whatever, that just fills my cup, because it's like, I'm not
Sure.
doing that in a contrived way. It's an authentic and a natural way,
No,
because
I
I'm just
understand. I mean,
curious
for
about
me,
it. So yeah, I
in the
mean, I
beginning when
love
I
it.
first did it, yeah, it was a lot of work, but I enjoy it. So when
Yeah,
you
exactly. Yeah,
when you started to, so when you started to do the podcasting, how did you go about finding your first guest to speak with? How did that all come together?
yeah. Sorry, I think that was a question you asked me that I didn't answer.
That's
Uh,
okay. No
so,
worries.
so I had so I had so I had the idea. Like I say, I was ruminating for so long, and that I was putting it together in my head like a presentation, like a pitch deck and things. And I was like, I wanted to do it in seasons. So I didn't get overwhelmed. I wanted this many guests. Initially, it was going to be like 10, then it became 15. So I had a list of people written down in my notes on my iPhone, and I'd like at least 30, because I thought if I can get one out of two to say yes, then even that's a big number to hit when you look at it, because one in two people to say yes to someone who's got no credibility is probably a big ask, really. But it was probably a bit of hubris in there initially. But I had this list of people, and I've kind of curated that list a little bit so that it was people that tick different boxes. So adventure, exploration, the natural world, people that had serious achievements, accomplishments, and some people that may have done so but were lesser known. And I had that list, and I was ruminating on it for so long. And I'm sure we'll come to it. I just one day, I like to keep myself accountable for things, and I just had this notion just to sign up to a premium account on LinkedIn, and think, if I do that and I get past the kind of gatekeeping, because these people must get emails and messages every day. If I do that and they can see that it's a premium account from that, and it gets to the other inbox, then that might show a bit of seriousness. And every single person I contacted said yes. And I couldn't believe it. As the messages started filtering in over those first few days, I was a bit struck by it. It's like, because now I'm like, shit, I need to I need to actually do this and figure out how to actually record it and stuff. So yeah, it was a bit of a it was just a bit of a roller coaster moment. I ruminated for so long, pulled the trigger, and then it
Sure.
just snowballed. And yeah.
Wow. So I think I said it, I don't know if it was a quote that you mentioned. I think it was on your website. And I think I called it out in the introduction. It was called Bridging the Moonshot Gap. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think that was something one of the guests had said. But the strap line for my show, it's called the Adventure Diaries podcast, obviously, and the strap line is authentic stories of adventure, exploration in the natural world, and it's to make your life extraordinary. So that's the point. So I will interview people that may have like climbed Everest. I've interviewed Terry Virts, who spent the most amount of days in space in the International Space Station. So there's people that have had these extraordinary achievements that maybe like you and I or the average person might not ever achieve. But what I'm trying to show with that is that they are people just like you and I that have had grand ideas and ambitions and dreams, and they've taken a chance on it, and then they've become what they've become. So I get them to talk. So we do the interview, and then at the end of the interview, I ask them for a call to adventure or a pay it forward. And that's the pay it forward is about giving a platform for charities and projects and worthy causes that people may not be familiar with. So it's a way to give back. But the call to adventure is for them to bridge that gap. So to give us something that you or I can maybe take a step forward to achieving, whether it's the weekend or whether it's something you want to plan further, a bit more grand in the future. And those are all tangible things that anybody can do after they listen to the episode. And it might be things that are so obvious, like go for a walk in the park, right? Everyone gets that. But there might be other things that are like describing an analog adventure to go and do in a very digital world, or a micro adventure, which is a term more so over in the UK, where it might be everyone has a 9 to 5. So when you get to the 5 p.m., have an adventure from 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. And that can mean sleeping on a hill under the stars or doing something. And these are things that these people that have all these big major adventures, they do things like this. They do these little crazy, ambiguous, weird little things. And they talk to us about it and encourage us to get out there and take that first step, because those first steps can lead to bigger and greater things, not just in the world of adventure, but as you as an individual. If you can make yourself in these little environments and take chances on things that you would have never really thought much about, what that does for your well-being and your mental health and your confidence is incredible.
So to kind of go back to the call to action and the pay it forward. Now you've done, I don't know how many episodes you've done, but it sounds like you've done quite a bit over the years. But over that time, was there, and I guess it's a two-part question. From a call to action, was there one that really resonated with you? Like, wow, I didn't expect to hear that. But that was really a very profound thought.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's so many actually, because I try to now. I try to do most of the things now, and I try to encourage others to do it. But there's a few things that stick with me. So we touched on Terry Virts, like the NASA astronaut. So he said something to me about don't tell yourself no. Doesn't matter what it is, don't tell yourself no. Because he was like, physically wasn't designed to be a NASA astronaut, right? Because of his body shape. And he was like, if I had listened to the naysayers, I might never have done this and would never, never became what became. And he does talks to children and things, and he always says, don't tell yourself no. So if you think you can't go and climb Everest, don't tell yourself you can't. You might not want to, but take steps that might get you to that. But coming back, one of so that's one thing. That's more from a mental side of things, but for an actionable thing, I had a lady, Cathy O'Dowd, who was on, who's the first South African lady that climbed Everest from both sides, and she then talked to me about, because I'm not a climber necessarily, I've done a little bit, but not much, and we have a lot of mountaineers, and I said to her, I'm not going to go and climb Everest, quite frankly. So she said to me, go to an indoor climbing gym. I mean, I'm in my late 40s, I've never done this before, and went and joined the gym. But she said, do it with your daughter. And my daughter's, she'll be coming up for 11 now. And her and I then joined the climbing gym, and we've been going for the past couple of years. And it's just a good thing for bonding. So me and my daughter go to that. And we've got no intention of doing that outside or going and climbing any mountain. We might go and hike, but we're not going to go and scale Everest. But I've had someone who's an award-winning public speaker, speaks all over the world, telling me to go and do that. And I went and done it. And now me and my daughter, I've got a membership, and it's good. It's good for bonding. It's good for just chatting. Sure. It's good exercise. So
I'm curious though, when you started the climbing indoors, and then I'm using you as the adult and your child. Yeah. Now, as a child, they have no sense of fear. Now, for you, when you started doing it the first time, what went through your head as you were starting to climb up those rocks?
Yeah, well, I'm not the best. I'm not the best at heights. It takes me a little while to kind of get used to that. And watching my daughter climb up that, because it's a bouldering gym, so we're not on harnesses or anything. So watching her climb up to the top and stuff is a bit nerve-wracking. But I mean, I climb like a piece of scaffolding. I'm not particularly nimble when it comes. I'm very into different sports. I mean, I do a lot of hiking and paddling. That's more my thing. I mean, adventure in any form is great, but I'm not for all the mountaineers that I interview and climbers. I'm not a climber, and I'm certainly not a mountaineer. I like the mountains and I'm skilled to an extent, but I'm not one for ropes and climbing necessarily. But yeah, it's good. I mean, as a parent, being protective and stuff, trying to allow my little girl to, or not allow her, but to encourage her to push boundaries, but at the same time, worried.
Well, you want to push the boundaries, but you also want to have respect for those boundaries, because it goes both ways. Now, as far as paying it forward, I'm sure you must have got some very interesting replies on that one.
Yeah. So to cover that again, Rick, and for those listening, so it's a long-standing segment in the show, and it's to give a platform for worthy causes and projects, and particularly things that may be important to the guest. And this is just about if they can get a platform to talk about it and listeners can go and support it, however that may mean. It might be giving time, even spreading the word further, or maybe even a financial donation, whatever that is. And I've had all the usual things that you would expect. We live in a world where there's a lot of conflict at the moment, so a lot of war zones, and we've had Medicines Sans Frontier, or Doctors Without Borders, that have come up a few times, and we've had like the Blue Cross, the Red Cross, we've had cancer charities, and they're all great. But the things that strike me on the show, and the things that I really resonate, are the things that are lesser known, where maybe like funding, for example, will go direct to the benefactors. And Cathy O'Dowd is another good example. So she recommended, I think it was ladies or the women of Ruwenzori for Women Health. So it's an organisation that's in Uganda, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And these are nurses that work in these, Western nurses that come over, work in these areas. And they educate all the mothers about maternal things and looking after babies when they're just born. And they create these little packs and they give them to new mothers and stuff, and all that money
Mm.
goes directly into these nurses and these parents and mothers in this region, and it bypasses the big charity conglomerates that may have, different ways of distributing funds, shall we say. So things like that are high impact, for not a lot of money either. But, small donations go a considerable way in these areas. And it's things like that I like when they come up on the show, because they really have the opportunity to make real tangible impacts for people.
That's excellent. Now, I as I've been listening, catching up with your shows, I noticed as time progressed, I saw a different cadence. Sometimes I saw episodes that would go for a good hour. Then all of a sudden I saw some going for like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and then you get back to another hour. Um, why the fluctuation in the time? I mean, do you, I guess for the ones that are like 10 minutes, do you just kind of take the gem of the conversation that it was a long
Yeah.
conversation? It was just like, well, I'll just take 10 minutes of that. And
Yeah, that's a good question. So the show runs in seasons, and like you say, season 5's coming out. So every season has 15 guests, and those full interviews are at least an hour. Some of them go an hour 15, 20. We've had a handful outliers that have gone for like 2 hours. We've split over 2 parts. Fantastic. But what I do is I'll then extract maybe just a call to adventure or the pay it forward just as a short soundbite that might be 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, and I just release them as separate little episodes, but they are extracts from the main episode, so it allows people just to, maybe listen to that and think, well, I'll go and listen to the full episode. But what I just started doing there the past couple of months is doing the highlights package as well. So from each episode in season 4, just the highlights, so some of the best or craziest moments or whatever that have been discussed, just extracting that with a little voiceover and saying, here are some of the highlights. If you enjoy the highlights, then go and listen to the full episode. So that's I'm trying to keep more, because I think what it's like, I hate being a slave to an algorithm and all this tech nonsense that we have to keep up with as producers of these shows. But if I have like long delays between any sort of like season, then I think that can impact listenerships and things like that. So I think just keeping that concurrency, it's a system I'm trying to introduce at the minute so that I can have my 15 episodes, some highlights package, and just so that there's always a steady stream of content coming out. But
no, I like that. I like that.
yeah, it's
So again, over the times that you've been talking to so many people of interests, where either they like to go sailing or they like to mountain climb or skydiving, whatever it is that they like to dive into. Of all the episodes that you've gone through, I mean, you talked about the astronaut. He was very interesting. I listened to that one. But what episode has been the most one that you've remembered the most? That was a conversation I just was not expecting, and it was more than I could have ever imagined.
Well, yeah, there's a couple actually, but I'm not sure when this episode will go out, but my season 5 starts on Thursday, which is the 26th of February, and I've pulled an episode. So of the 15 episodes, there was one that I was going to put it like episode 8 or something like that, and I listened to it this week as I was editing it, and it has to go as number 1. And I've contacted, so it's a guy called Jude Krewald, and it just speaks to me personally and hopefully others in so many levels. We talk about, he done an adventure and an expedition in West Africa. So he's a lovely guy. So he done a big expedition like 10 or so years ago. He cycled from the UK to India. But then he left. After that adventure, he went into the corporate world for 10 years, but he also had the pool of adventure the whole time. And then he's went and done this big expedition in Africa. But Jude suffers from some, not suffers, but has some conditions as far as the ADHD, and we talk about neurodivergence, autism, and as those conditions, how they how they can become superpowers for the right people in the right environments, how you learn in different environments, and what adventure teaches you about that. And he's also an adventure mentor. And that conversation, I've literally just been editing and polishing that before we came on here. And it's probably one of the best episodes I think I've done to date. And I'm super excited for that to get out on Thursday, because it's all about adventure, but it's reframing some of the mental health issues that people have, and hopefully giving people a safer space to listen and acknowledge and hopefully understand those conditions a little bit better. That's. But there's been so many. I mean, I would hate to do a disservice to anyone else that's been on it. I mean, I
Sure.
love every single episode. And what I will say, there's only 4 episodes that I've recorded that I have never released. So for anyone and any of my guests that ever hear this episode, take something from that, and not that I'm any benchmark by any, but just that if it's been published and it's been put out there, then it's something that I think the world wants to hear, because it certainly struck a chord with me. And yeah, and those people that didn't make the cut, I apologise.
Well, you kind of hit you kind of hit on something there about striking a chord. Again, going back to all these individuals that you've spoken to and in the stories they've shared with you. What did you learn about yourself as you heard these stories being shared, and some of the joy and even some of the difficulties they encountered? How did that impact you?
I think it allows me. It makes me feel. I mean, I've spoke about this as being I spoke about before about being in therapy, and this being almost like a product of therapy. I think I might have said that earlier, but this was the genesis from it. It was, being in therapy for a number of years, and my therapist brought me back to all the things that brought me joy and all that kind of stuff, and understanding myself, my own head a little bit more, and what really was important to me. And now I've done this show, and I'm 3 years into it, season 5, having all these conversations, and I'm less hung up on all that stuff. I feel that I've matured much more as a person. I've grown as a person, as cliche as it sounds. But hearing these conversations with these people they do hard things. They put themselves in degrees of discomfort for the adventure and the excitement and the entertainment, but to prove that they can, not prove, but to show that they can do that, but for themselves. But at the same time, a lot of these people have the same insecurities that you and I may have that we never talk about. And I think that's it. And at the end of the day, they might have cycled halfway across the world, but they need to go and put the kids to bed. They need to pay the mortgage next week. They need to go and get the car fixed, flat tires. They deal with all the same shit that we deal with day in, day out. And they're just ordinary people, but they do some extraordinary things, and they still have the same insecurities, and starting to realise that there's we're all just human, and it's that human factor. And social media and all the rest of it, it's too easy to look at people through a tinted lens and think that everything's rosy. But these people are just people, and that's the thing. And when I'm speaking to someone who's, like, let's say, like an astronaut, done some of the most extraordinary things you could ever imagine, and he's just chatting about football and just like ordinary things, and the ordinary things he may do in his home life when he's back in Texas or whatever, and it's just, yeah, it just opens my mind to what's possible on this planet, and it gives me a degree of comfort, also a degree of anxiety. So many things to do, but yeah.
Now, I was going to ask you, is there a common thread from all the people you've spoken to? But I think you kind of alluded to that. I think the big one is that whether we realize it or not, we're all in the same boat. We're all human. We all have our faults, weaknesses, and strengths. And
Yeah.
I mean, has there been anyone that you haven't been able to talk to that does a certain type of adventure that you like to eventually? It's like, hey, I've talked to mountaineers, I've talked to sailors, I've talked to people who goes, deep scuba diving, but if there's, one person or a couple of persons I'd like to be able to speak to, who would that be?
See, it broke up a little bit there, Vic. Sorry, could you repeat the question
Sure.
again?
I mean, in terms of the people that you've spoken to, people who have gone mountain climbing, scuba diving, sailing, if you will, or even, jumping out of an airplane. Is there a person or persons who do a particular sport that you haven't had the chance to interview? Who might that be, or what sport?
There's probably two. There's two actually. So I've been trying to interview someone who does uh, caving, like going into these weird, obscure spaces and into cave systems, subterranean, and that's just kind of fallen through a few times. I've had a few people that I follow, and I'm hoping to get them on the show. And there's been a few. So that, and there's also someone that bush piloting, so flying aeroplanes into these remote areas of the jungle, who I've actually got scheduled next week, which I'm quite excited about. So, for a period, I'm not sure if you get this as well. So, like with your guests, everyone thinks that if you go and get out like a A-list celebrity, it's going to change your show if you get them on. And I've had people that have been relatively celebrities and stuff like that, but it doesn't always translate into. Some might have like certain status or loads of followers, but it doesn't always translate into necessarily the best conversation or the best reach as well. So for a period, I was always thinking I have like a top list of people I wanted to get on the show. And the reality is, there's only two people on it that I haven't had on the show yet, and one of them I'm still kind of talking to, that I've met in person a couple of times. And he's from the TV world, so I won't kind of say too much more about that in a minute. But yeah, I'm hoping that kind of materialises at some point. So less sport, but more natural world focused in terms of wildlife and things like that. So yeah, I've got so many topics. That's the thing. There's so many subtopics. In my room, I've got 3 whiteboards, and they're covered with ideas. I've got things
Oh, that's great. That's
printed on.
great.
But yeah, and I subscribe to all the magazines. I subscribe to BBC Wildlife, National Geographic, Nature.com. I watch, all the programs. So I've got a list. In fact, actually, what I watched the show Alone. So I don't know if you're familiar with Alone, the survival TV show. I think it's big in
Yeah.
Yes, I love that show, and I always have done. And in my very first season, I had the season 8 winner. He was one of the first people that said yes, and Clay Hayes came onto the show, and
My gosh.
that was a bit of a couldn't believe it and I was interviewing. I just read his book, and I was like so starstruck as well, even more so than I was when I done Terry Virts. And Clay and I have exchanged messages and that a few times over the years, but that was becoming a bit of a theme that I've kind of dropped a little bit, because I've had 3 winners from the Alone show on the show, or at least 3 contestants on the show. So so trying to not chase celebrity status for the guests. I think that everybody particularly people I follow, have a good story to tell, and they don't need to be celebrities. They could be someone with 500 followers on Instagram, for all that matters, but just someone that's done something cool and interesting that I would like to chat about.
No, I agree with what you're saying in terms of doesn't have to be a celebrity. I mean, I had one celebrity, and I wasn't quite sure what to expect. But when we started the interview, they were the complete opposite of what you saw on screen. But I mean, they were just a regular individual. It just really stunned me. I thought, wow. Well, I mean, I guess I figure, well, that's what makes them a good actor,
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, that's great. So, how does your child feel about this podcast that you do? She must be very curious to see how you pull all this together.
Yeah, she loves it. So my little girl Nina, I actually interviewed her on the podcast. So she had a
Ah,
school project. Yeah, so she had to do a report on the Amazon River. So I said I would interview her on the podcast, and I gave her some homework in addition to the school's homework. And she done I thought she'd done incredible. So she came on the show, we recorded it, it's on YouTube, and it was released on audio. And some of the people who follow me, there's a lady, Alison, who follows me. I think she works in a school somewhere, and she sent me a lovely message after it that they listened to Nina's episode in school as well. So Nina was on the podcast, and then a lot of school kids down south in England had heard her chatting about the Amazon. So yeah, I'm hoping that she becomes a part of this at some point. She can help with my research or editing or something.
you never know. You never know. That's great. I'm glad she was able to participate and get a
Yeah.
sense of what you do and your role here. Um, I guess the question I have is, with everything that you've done thus far, is there anything you would have done different now that you know what you know?
Uh, yeah, I think I'm a, I over I kind of what I said, maybe it sounds a bit counterintuitive to what I've said earlier. I know all my guests, I know all their stories, I know them from afar, but maybe over preparing for the interviews, eh, or even actually classing them as an interview. I think the language I've started using over the past couple of seasons is conversation and conversation frames. So when I speak to someone, I'll share that on email and say, look, here's a list of topics. It's a conversation frame. Whereas when I started, it was maybe like 2 pages of here are all the topics and the potential questions that I would ask you. And I never felt comfortable with that at the time, but I just felt like I had to do something to prepare and over prepare. And that's, I think looking back now, I'd probably just say to myself, take it easy. Don't stop stressing about it. It's not overthinking it, because I'm not accountable to anybody on this, which is it's different when I'm in a day job and you have to prepare. It's win or lose, and it can be on my neck. If we don't put our best foot forward. Whereas this, I mean, I've got no.
No, no, I totally, no, I totally agree, because that's what I did in the very beginning too. And there were moments when, my wife would come into the office and she would see me walking back and forth, talking to myself, thinking out loud. And she just grabbed me one time and she said, look, you're overthinking this. You've
Yeah,
got this.
yeah,
And
exactly.
that finally hit me like, you're right. But like you want to have a good conversation, a very constructive conversation that is
Yeah,
meaningful. And I think to that end, when people come to your podcast, and I'm going to be really happy to start promoting this even more so off my website. What would be the walk away of if you come to this podcast? Here is what I hope you will take away and understand why I did this and why I'm doing it.
yeah. So what the main reason that I started doing it, and I touched on this in another podcast, is like that chap Judah just spoke about. For a big period, so immersed in my corporate life, I wasn't taking care of myself as much as getting outdoors. It was just work, 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 work all the time, and I felt that this was all slipping away. I was not having as much adventure. I wasn't having as much time outdoors. I was going on holidays or vacations, but I wasn't doing the things that I like to do, that I get passionate about. And I felt I had to do something because I was slipping into middle age, and then I was worried about getting to that point of no return. So I thought, if I start talking about this and I start saying this and start having these conversations and start talking about these things, then you kind of manifest it, but not in a woo-woo way. You make yourself accountable to do it. And that's exactly what I've done. So as part of it, I now run like mini expeditions. So these like 3-4 day events every year in the summer with my friends out into the wilds of Scotland, kayaking, camping, you know, proper wilderness areas with a bunch of guys. that we've never really done that before. We all partied back in the day. We've all kind of went our separate ways into our kind of settled lives a little bit, but bringing that together and showing people what we can still do, as well as, you don't need to be one thing. You can live multiple essentially lives to an extent. You can be adaptable, but there's so much out there that, and that was it. I just wanted to make sure that I kept myself accountable, and I am bringing other people along on that journey. Some of them like it, some of them are just going with the flow, I think. But it's exactly that. It's filling my cup. It's keeping me accountable. I'm loving life and loving all the stuff that we're doing now, and it's opened so many doors. It's the things that I dreamt about as a little kid. Indiana Jones and all that, watching all that stuff and all the nature programs and never knowing what was possible. Now I've built a career, a successful, relatively successful career for me. It's a career I'll continue with, but this side, whatever we call this gives me the outlet for all the things that I want to do that I never thought were possible. And now I'm getting opportunities to go to places that are just incredible. You've got things booked later this year as well. So we're doing another expedition in Scotland around the Isle of Skye, kayaking with the same guys again. Potentially going out to Uganda for an expedition across 3 of the national parks, doing some stuff out in Vancouver Island later in July as well, with orcas that I've been invited out to. It's just, just not enough. I don't have enough annual leave now from and I've got family commitments. So the biggest problem I need to solve now is I've got.
But just think, all those trips, you're probably going to come across other individuals that you can do a podcast interview with. I mean, just think of the opportunities that are just waiting for you. But, I think, like for me, I'm very close to Yosemite. So working in the corporate world like you have, I'm retired now, but there were moments where we took trips there and you're walking down in the valley and you're just looking at El Capitan.
Yeah.
And it's the sheer silence. Just, I don't know. It's just like you feel, I mean, I know I'm getting melodramatic here, but it's almost like you feel the Lord's hand on your shoulder. Like, hey, calm down, just relax.
Yeah.
But, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I think going back to actually answer your question, I went in a bit of a ramble there, but to answer that question, if people come to the show, I want people to really, and hopefully they do without me trying to convince you, that you'll realise that the stories and the conversations are authentic. Absolutely, they're about adventure, exploration and natural worlds, subjects, wildlife and things like that. But I want it to open your eyes and your heart and your ears to what's out there in the world. You might have heard about Yosemite, but have you heard about search and rescue in Yosemite? So that's an episode that's coming. Vancouver Island. Do you know about the sea wolves in Vancouver Island, or when to go and paddle with orcas? Or what about Uganda? Do you know? There's all these things, because I had. Because, like I say, it's fulfilling my armchair exploration, but enabling my actual adventures as well. So, in one of the seasons, I had someone talk to me all about Uganda, and I was like mind blown after it. And I spent hours on YouTube, and I couldn't believe it. And some of the scenery, I was like, I need to get there. And then now, 2 years later, booked. We're hopefully going in October for 11 days around some of these national parks and stuff, potentially trekking for gorillas, as well as cycling and pack rafting and stuff. And yeah, it's just mad. And then last year, I mean, going off on a rant now, but last year I was invited over to the US as well. So just through the show, I went to like Utah and Colorado and was pack rafting with people in the industry, and just lovely people just to sit and have a coffee with or a beer. And it was, it just opens your eyes. The world that's out there and the people that are out there, the connections, it's just phenomenal. It really is.
Imagine. And if you hadn't started the podcast.
Exactly. Well, that's the point. That's the point. And I mean, I'm doing it for me first and foremost, but by proxy, it's helping other people, because through the
Yes.
segments on it, I'm getting messages that people are reconnecting with loved ones or family members that they haven't really maybe connected with in a long time, going doing obscure things at the weekend. And I've had people that I had a lovely message from someone who was pretty much going through a midlife crisis, and I think quite poorly. And listening to an episode, it made them go do a triathlon after it. I couldn't believe it. And it's like, yeah, it's just these little messages. It's designed to be. It's not made to be dramatic entertainment. It's a proper authentic story about someone's lived experience on an adventure. But then it's about, what can you do now? You don't put the headphones off and go about your day. I want it to linger with you and leave something where you go and actually start planning. Are you going to pick up the phone to your brother or your sister or your mother or your father and go and do something at the weekend, or
I
at
hear
the
you.
end of the month, or
That makes
whatever?
great
So I
sense.
want people to listen
So,
and act on it and just enjoy themselves a little bit more.
well said. So, as I end the show, Chris, I try to end it with some speed round questions. I think you're kind of familiar with this because I think I've heard you do some of these questions on your podcast. So I've got 5 of them.
Yeah.
I shared them with you, so I think you're going to be ready for this. What was your best live concert you ever attended, and why?
Oasis, which was in August 2025 in Edinburgh, Scotland, because it was nothing like pure nostalgia from 1990. It brought me right back to 1995, and I had the time of my life.
Oasis. Oh, you hit a chord with me on that one. What do you wish you had more time to do? What do you wish you had more time to do?
Adventure.
Adventure. Wow. Why didn't I figure that one?
Yeah.
That's a good one. What was your first paying job?
Paying job. What was my first paying job? Well, the first thing that ever paid me was, I used to watch football. I used to watch Cars. This is a thing in the UK. Not so much now, that when you like soccer. So when people drive to the stadium and park their cars in all the little housing areas, we used to go up and ask them, "Do you want us to look after your car?" As in, we will stop people breaking into your car, but if we look after it, you pay us money. And we used to make lots of money, so that it was kind of entrepreneurial as a kid. So we used to get lots of money for making sure people didn't break in or set fire to cars.
Okay. I like that. Okay, here's one I think might be dear to your heart. If your wife and your daughter wrote a book about you, what would the title be?
The Misadventures of a Daft Scotsman, which I think I've said before.
Okay, last question. What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail?
That's a fantastic question. What would I do if I knew I could not fail? That I would sail around the world and arrive in Antarctica and cross Antarctica.
Wow.
Yeah. So sail around,
Why
arrive
Antarctica?
through the Drake Passage and then across, traverse Antarctica. Yeah. Antarctica is one of those things I
why
want to get to.
Antarctica?
Yeah, it's like a few places on the planet. I've had a bit of an obsession with that forever. And I've interviewed quite a few people on the show that have been there and done some extraordinary things. And I want to go and I want to test myself in that kind of environment. But I'd like to do it in a way that I'd like to do it in a way that I can guarantee safety. But yeah, I mean, I think I'd definitely go to Antarctica at some point and maybe do something there, but certainly not to the extremes that the people that I interview. I'm not that I'm not bold, is that I'm just not there's other things I want to save my time and energy and resources for, but I definitely want to go to the continent and experience it at some point. That's a great question.
Okay.
I absolutely love that question. Yeah.
Use it on your show.
Yeah, I actually might nick that. Yeah, that is. I'm going to be thinking about that all night now, and probably I could have said
Okay.
something political as well, but or world hunger and all that cliche nonsense. But I wanted to keep it to adventure. Hopefully,
No worries. I love that. So, Chris, I really want to thank you for taking the time to share your world in podcasting, the world of adventure. I think you provided a lot of key insights. I think people will have learned a lot of things that it was so obvious, but they just didn't realize it till they heard it from someone who is kind of taking that travel down the road and having met so many people who have gone in different directions to test their adventure spirit. You know, they all have different stories. They all have different outcomes and different meanings. But I wanted to thank you for that. And to our audience, I thank you so much for joining us. And I'll make sure to provide Chris's website. And please go to the website. But more importantly, go to his podcast. I've listened to almost all of the episodes. I'm almost caught up. But everyone has its own unique story, and I promise you're going to enjoy it. So to that end, I thank you all very much, and we'll see you soon.